And they got a very young quarterback.
Probably not. You want to be good to ride by him. He'll
Played a little bit last week.
Yeah, but he's young.
whatever you want because he helps us out.
But it's one of those things where, yeah, if it comes down to one of those, you can't play that, then it's nice to
They replaced them all.
They're still big.
Willing to give a lot of
But
money.
the center is a 6-year
Museum
season.
out there.
Yeah.
They'll go in
There's a lot of guys, 23, 24, 25 years
So
old.
am I.
I just don't have a lot of time to
It's not,
Old days.
it's not really a college football.
When is this from?
That's
You
what I
were,
feel like.
at the airport.
I feel like I'm working too
There's
long.
There's one 7-year guy.
Writing something.
Well, it's 2020, didn't know. Brady.
Yeah.
Just let me know.
Yeah.
That's how new habits are made.
That's where expectations change.
They really only need 2.
I would think,
The crystal whistle position is already.
A while ago when bowling did
I mean,
I've got 2 interviews tomorrow,
right.
but I will put one in that.
For Peggy. Just wondering.
Yep. I gotta, I'll talk to Peggy about it tomorrow. Can you make a note?
Thanks, John.
Because this is the offices, right? Like the old hangers.
Tomorrow morning, but tomorrow afternoon.
The old hangers are.
We have
Look at this again, there's the old hangar.
foundation meeting on Wednesday
So this
night.
is how you come in, and
Oh,
this is where they recognize stuff, so the planes come in here, go out, and I think the oil dispensing things.
Yeah, well, we're meetings, I'll be going across.
Oh, and then this is
I'll have
Swiftway.
the,
Yep.
everything
That
done.
makes
Did you know when this was? When this was?
Right here. I'll get it set up in my face.
2019,
Was there a game going on or just practice?
Not that long ago.
on the back, on the top. No,
This must have been when they were working on the initial draft of the master plan.
It has nothing to do with the union contract.
Shane Daniels.
Hi, Shane.
How are you? Your pop freeze or something there?
No, but if you wanted, I would just give it a change. Yeah, change that box.
There was a test one, and then, and what happened is I was
Are you
setting
finding
up,
stuff like that?
I was
Well, if
setting
it's
up,
frozen, then you can put that super cold.
type all
How's harvest going?
email exchange side, so I was setting it up.
No issues as of yet?
Well, when you're running with silage club, you always have issues. That's true, we got
It
done.
was me or whatever. And
Are you monosilage?
Yeah, we got about 400 acres we weren't done.
Yeah, on the first one, so you can believe that. So I believe.
Learn as we go.
Those eating machines.
Yep. Mark and I did.
No, good. Yeah, I'll talk to him. I know you talked about.
back here it shows the phasing.
Yeah.
Is this agenda?
This is where it explains,
From Friday?
like, these are the current hangers.
Same agenda, doesn't
We
change.
would build
They were
here.
thinking of building, I think, let's see, build new hangars, so this would phase 1.
Let them both.
Phase
We
3,
don't have department heads and
and phase 2 was tear down the existing.
stuff tonight like we normally would.
I mean, either of those spots would work good. This one is where they do the outs.
Stopped it last year is anytime there's a project there, then at that point.
Yeah. Right. Build them on
We're
the.
seconds away.
Dave's rolling back. Add another one later or something. I think they were building them, where they built them.
What's that?
Idea on their hangars, are they building, were they two?
I don't think we've decided that at this point.
Did you come all the way over here to do that?
I did.
Fit.
I didn't want to holler at you.
Yeah.
If you put them side by side,
Thanks anyway.
Yeah, there's a way to do it where you have like two back-to-back so that you can use less
That's what
space.
the one has
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, yeah. You can get a full T hanger that way without. Right, right. I imagine that's what's gonna happen, but they haven't.
If I
done
could
it.
have everyone's attention, I'd like to call the September 26th, 2022 meeting of the Tracy City Council to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone tonight. You have your agenda in front of you. I'd like a motion to either approve the agenda as it stands, or are there some additions to the agenda?
Motion to approve is written.
Second.
I'd like to add a couple things to the agenda. One would be to set a date for the next meeting of the community work group and council. And number two, I'd just like to have a little discussion of possible future use of the city's tree farm.
Mayor, I had intended to bring up the issue of the community center work group under my, report. Where do you want to put those? Do you want to put them under council communications, or do you want to put it under city administrator, or what would you like to do?
Well, we already approved the agenda, so I think.
I mean, I can bring up the issue and we can discuss it if that's all right.
Add it under his.
Okay, city
I've
administrator
got like
report.
5 or 6 things, and I'll just include those so we can talk about it
Okay,
at that time.
very good. Okay, all in favor of the
excuse
agenda,
me.
signify by saying
Are you going to include the tree farm?
Yeah, I got the tree farm down too. We can talk about that.
Okay.
all those in favor of the agenda as printed, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. We will move down to the public hearing on the establishment of a public, an ordinance franchise agreement on, with Xcel Energy. Eric, could you give us, I'll open the public hearing, and if you could give us some background on that. I know we
Sure.
discussed it at the last meeting.
Yeah, so this is the second reading, and so this will be, the ordinance will take effect after passage of this, 30 days after. I don't have a formal presentation on this because we've talked about this several times, but just to kind of hit the highlights on it. The city charter allows us to do franchise agreements for up to 20 years, which this would be. And we currently have a franchise agreement with Xcel. It's expiring at the end of January in 2023, and so it's something we had to extend in any case. So there's actually 2 ordinances on here. One is the franchise agreement, and that's fairly standard and straightforward in terms of the kinds of things that it does. What's unique about this particular action tonight is that it includes a second ordinance for franchise fees. We currently charge franchise fees for our cable providers, like Spectrum and whatnot, and Vast. But we currently do not charge franchise fees for our for Xcel or Minnesota Energy for our electrical and our gas. State law allows us to do that. There's over 90 cities around the state that currently charge fees for these kinds of things, and so it's a fairly kind of normal thing. So when we back in June, we gave a budget presentation to the city council and said, do you have interest in creating franchise fees for next year? When this agreement expires with Xcel, and that you gave us the green light to do that. What we had done is some research as far as what an appropriate fee would be, and we just took the average fee that people are charging across the state, and that is the fee that we propose for 2023, which is $2.64, if I remember correctly. And then that would be for residential homes, and then for commercial homes would be double that for $5.28 a month. So we're kind of projecting that on an annual basis it might generate an additional $40,000. We get about $20,000 right now from the cable providers. There's more people that have electric than have cable these days. And so that's kind of the gist of what you see. You see the approval of a franchise agreement and approval of the fee ordinance. I've been working with Eric Polly from Excel, and he is here tonight, and I'm sure that he would like to talk about the agreements themselves and what their thoughts are on them. One more thing I want to note is there was a typo in the second one. It said that the fee would take place, that would start in the January 2022 billing cycle. It meant to say January of 2023. We've got a corrected one here, and that's just a typo on our part, thinking, well, you know, sometimes you type the wrong year and when you're in the current year. So with that, Mayor, I'd be happy to if you would like to hear from Eric Polly, and he can talk about Excel's perspective on what you have in front of you.
Eric.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate having the opportunity to come up and talk to you folks this evening. So I'm Eric Polly, Community Relations Manager for XL Energy, located out of Sioux Falls, and we serve some of the communities in southwest Minnesota as well out of Sioux Falls. So Eric did a good job of kind of teeing that up. Basically what it is, the franchise agreement ordinance, which really just gives us a guideline for kind of a rapport between XL Energy and the city. To be able to manage the construction, operation, maintenance of the road right-of-ways as it relates to power line and electric facilities and whatnot. So it does not set any energy goals, determine any energy mixes or anything of that sort. It is specifically kind of catered towards that right-of-way negotiations and so forth. As he mentioned, the city would like to impose a franchise fee with this agreement renewal. And XL Energy has reviewed all of the pertinent information tied in with that ordinance and is in agreement with that as well. Thank you for pointing out that notation too, where it said 2022 as opposed to 2023, just a typo and nothing else. So outside of that, I guess I would just open it up to you folks for any questions you might have for me. Appreciate the opportunity again. The community of Tracy's been really good to XL Energy, and hopefully you've seen that reciprocated. We try to give back to the community on a yearly basis through many different events, through chambers and so forth, and look forward to continuing that partnership.
Thank you, Eric. Before turning it over to the council for questions, I'd like to ask the public, if there's anyone from the public who would like to address this proposed ordinance, offer any testimony, offer any questions. Okay, hearing nothing from the public as far as testimony, I will close the...
Can I add one more thing for the record too?
Yes.
Just one more thing for the record. Matt Gross, the city attorney's not here tonight, but he's reviewed the agreement as well. I've got emails from him saying that he has no concerns about it and that it meets state law and all of those kinds of things. And just so for the record, our legal team reviewed it as well.
Thank you. Do members of the council have any questions about this?
I just had one question. So this is a 20-year agreement. Is the amount of that fee the same for the full 20 years?
It can change and be adjusted. Yes. Yeah. You would have to amend the fee ordinance in order to do that, but you could do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the council? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve second reading for ordinance number 380, franchise agreement. Could I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Teagues,
Aye.
Koopman,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Dobson,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
and Landite.
Aye.
Okay, we also have a second public hearing, which is related, but it's on ordinance number 381, and it specifically deals with authorizing a franchise fee. Eric, do you want to address that?
Well, I was actually thinking we had opened up the public hearing for both of the ordinances at the same time, but there isn't anything else that I would add about it. So if you want to open it and close it real quick again, we can.
Yeah, that's what I was understanding was the proper procedure. So the public hearing on the second ordinance is open. Does anyone have any public comment to make on that? If not, I will close the public hearing. Any further questions from the council? Could I have a motion to approve this ordinance, number 381?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Jones,
Aye.
Landine,
Aye.
Whitman,
Yes.
Dobson,
Aye.
Teagues,
Aye.
Pro Tem Mayor Schmidt.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I think that's a step in the right direction. Item number 5 on our agenda is audience participation. Does anyone have anything to bring up that is not on the agenda?
We were just wondering, I suppose I have to get over here.
If we could set up a workforce meeting, and Eric already mentioned it, but we were here just to Tracy.
And I'm Karen Crowe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Well, if you could discuss that while we're here, that would be nice. We have some dates when our group is available too.
You wanna, if you probably want to get home for Monday Night Football, I would guess.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
So do
figured.
we.
So we can discuss it right now if you'd like. It makes no difference to me.
Did you have any dates to suggest, or would you like the council to suggest some dates?
We have one date that would work very good for all of us, and that would be the 3rd of October, which is
Next Monday.
Monday
Monday
night.
night.
Next Monday.
A week from today?
We technically have a planning commission that night, but I think we could probably do it after the planning commission. The planning commission won't take very long.
So you'd already.
That's at 5, right? Planning
Well,
session.
well, we could try to do the planning commission earlier so that, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, Monday the 3rd would be fine.
Are there any other big conflicts in the community that anyone knows about? Council members, okay? Consensus of the council to go with the date, October 3rd, Monday, October 3rd?
What time?
I would suggest 6. We do the planning commission at 5:30 and then start the meeting at 6. That'd be my suggestion.
Okay.
Where-
Everyone in favor of that?
I mean, I think we could do it in the library basement if it's available that day. Val's here, but she probably doesn't know the schedule, but that's,
I think it is, yeah, that would be fine.
okay.
Okay. I think we can just go ahead
Sure.
with that date without voting on it.
Yep,
It's fine
we
with
can do that. We don't need to vote on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to that.
6.
6 o'clock?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
We'll see you all then. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment from the public on any item not on the agenda? Okay, thank you. We'll move down on our agenda to the consent calendar. And we have, the first thing is the approval of the September 12th council minutes and the September 6th, 2022 Community Work Group Council meeting minutes.
I'll get them all. I'll make a motion to approve the September 12th council minutes, September 6th CCWG minutes, approve the municipal accounts payable without breakthrough beverage, approve the municipal accounts receivable, and approve the park board minutes from August 10.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? I'd just like to add, I thought Diane really did a nice job in transcribing the minutes for the September 6th community work group meeting. That was long. So, all in favor of approving those minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are approved. And we have one final approval, the approval of the municipal accounts payable with Breakthrough Beverage.
Also move.
Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
We've got a first and a second. All in favor of approving the municipal accounts payable with Breakthrough Beverage signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, they are approved. Okay, we'll go on to mayor and council communications. What do we have that we'd like to pass on to the public here? That's not on the agenda. I'd just like to say real quickly, and maybe Eric, you were going to say something about it too, but I thought we had a really positive meeting, kickoff meeting for the Safe Routes to School on Friday, and just a lot of optimism, and you'll be hearing more about that. But there were some people from the school district represented, city represented, and of course the meeting was facilitated by the Southwest Regional Development Commission, and we earlier had received a planning grant to facilitate that. But it sounds pretty positive that there could be some grants available to help pay for any project that moves forward. So anything else under Mayor and Council Communications? Otherwise, we will go on to City Administrator report. Take
Sure.
it away, Eric.
So I got a 5 or 6 things to kind of go over with you. One of them we already mentioned, and that's good. The next question that I have is, a couple years ago during the election, we did a candidate forum, and we televised it. I think Per may have been involved in it. I haven't asked Per if he wanted to do one again or not yet, but the question to the council is we don't really sponsor it, but we provide the room for something like that. And do you, as a council, feel like that is something we want to do again this year?
Would we invite all the people that want to be write-ins, or what's?
Well, that's kind of why I'm asking, because ultimately you've got this situation where it's mostly unopposed, except you've got these declared write-in candidates, and so you kind of have to decide, do you want to do it? Who do you invite? That's kind of the direction that I'm looking for. Really, it's a direction: do we provide the facility if Per and the paper wanted to do one?
I think it would be good for especially since we have some write-ins, the public gets to see them or meet them or hear their answers, whatever questions Per throws at them, I guess.
What's easier, doing that or doing a written one?
Both. I'm doing the written one for sure. But I haven't talked with Eric yet. So.
Other council opinions?
Personally, I think the written is fine. I mean, if they did not file originally, do we sit here and provide free advertisement for write-ins? I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I kind of agree. If you wanted to be heard that much, you should have
Filed at the first
filed
place.
for it.
But if you do a written, that gives everybody a chance to get their viewpoints out there, their questions answered for the public. But I don't know about doing
It would be the similar questions I would ask in the paper. I mean,
so are we
maybe some redundancy.
duplicating?
Yeah, I think just a written one, personally.
Fair's going to do that, I think that's probably going to be the most sought after. That's what most people are expecting. That's what they've done in the past.
What
but it would
I
be-
put in writing is what I'm going to say on TV. No one's going to contradict themselves. So to do it in two different ways, I don't know if that's
So
necessary.
do you usually do a picture too, right, of each of the
Sure,
candidates?
we do have a picture for each council candidate, and then there's a mayoral race too now, so
Yeah.
they'll be separate, just like we do with the school board,
Yeah.
and House and Senate.
It would be just for the people that watch the council meetings that don't get the paper. And I don't know if there is anybody like that. Doesn't matter to me otherwise. I'm not involved, so I'm good.
Yeah, I wasn't 2 years ago, so I was good.
So, some people I know watch council meetings, and then some people say, well, I don't get the paper. Well, now they need to get the paper, I guess. Is that right, Pat?
Yep, we're going to increase sales for that.
Franchise fee needs.
The hard part I've got here, and I kind of agree with Jerry, is when you file, what is it, $2, whatever, it ain't very much. Now what we're saying is, and you said the advertising part, is we're saying, okay, now we're going to have a splash come out in the paper with all of these write-in candidates. The ones that should have filed anyway, now we're giving them a chance in writing to talk about the same thing you guys paid $2 to. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I'm not so sure I agree with it. I mean, that's, if they were sincere, they should have filed. That's my theory.
And we're all going to be on the same footing with the questions in the paper. I mean, it's not because of being afraid of competition by any means. I mean, we're going to be put on the same footing by able to answer, because PAIR is going to include the ones that have proclaimed to be a write-in candidate.
Same questions for everyone.
So I don't think we need to do both forms.
I would just like to make a little distinction here. And I think that it's very important for the council to realize that it's not their decision whether PAIR does or does not have a question and answer candidate form in the paper. And I kind of feel the same way about it's not our decision whether there is a televised forum in this council chamber. I just don't want the council, I don't think it's proper for us to do anything that could be construed favoring one candidate or the other. Not years ago, it sounds like ancient history, but in sometime in the past, the forums that were held here were always sponsored by a non-profit service group. I'm thinking about Women of Today for years sponsored the forum here, and they were responsible for all the questions and so forth, and I think all the city's involvement was only to the extent of providing the space. And so I'm fine with if some group comes forward, whether it's the paper or the Cirrhosis Club or the Kiwanis Club or whoever it is, wants to sponsor the forum. I'm fine with the city providing the facilities, but I don't want me personally to be making the decision of whether there is a forum in this chambers or not.
Point well made.
Mayor, you kind of have to, because at the end of the day, it belongs to the city, and it's city resources that we would be using, for it. So somebody has to be here to start the equipment. That's staff time. Somebody. We part of our franchise agreement to have the cable access, in the first place, and so. I understand your desire to try to stay out of it as much as possible, but it's really just a decision: do you provide the resources or not? To provide that. I don't
That's correct, and I would
It's
say
not
that's
whether or
what I
not
was
there's
trying
going to be a
say.
forum or not. I mean, you can always have a forum. Pear can sponsor a forum or something like that. Really, the question is only, is it going to be televised? That's really the question.
And I guess I agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
Let's just, if they want to have a forum, let's provide the services for them. If they don't, nobody steps forward to do the forum, then we extended our hand.
I don't hear 4 people saying that. What I hear is I hear 2 people saying that. The question is, are we gonna provide the services to televise it? That's my only question.
That's right.
Yes or no?
And I would make a motion to do that.
Okay.
Provide the
Good.
services. That's it.
That's
Not lead it.
That's
not-
perfect. That's all I want.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you, George. Do we have a second for that motion?
Well, only 2 of you have no interest in it.
I was
So
going to
I
say,
don't
do
know
we
whether or not,
abstain?
I think Ron has to probably do the second for this thing then.
Because we three,
The 3 of us are up for
Yeah.
election, so I mean, that's kind of one of those things where it's,
could be construed as a conflict of interest.
I would completely support if someone else out there wanted to organize it, that I'm in full support of providing this facility and whatever else for the technology to broadcast it to the public. If that's what you're looking for.
I would
think
suggest
we're
you
fine.
second the motion then.
I'll second it, that's fine, I don't know.
Okay, we've had a first and a second for the city of Tracy to make available its facilities and provide them manpower to hold a forum here and televise it, but not sponsor it. And that's motion has been first and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. A roll call, please.
Goodman,
No.
Jiggs,
Nope.
Dobson,
Yes.
and Jones,
No.
Landite,
Yes.
and Pro Tem Mayor Schmidt.
Yes.
Tie.
So it doesn't pass.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, that motion
Tough government.
does not pass.
Okay. Thank you for that. I know that's an uncomfortable discussion. I apologize for that. But the next item is also a discussion that we've on some kinds of things we've had in the past. So I want to let you know that the school through Carl Campbell has raised some money to build a kind of a deck out by the softball field, where the girls play. It's 8 or 9 feet off the ground, and Shane's been working with them on the structure of it, making sure that it meets the building codes, etc. The question has come up, should we charge building fees or permit fees for it? We're talking about a couple $100 or something like that. Technically speaking, it will be something that we will own, just like we own, the other facilities that are already there. We don't typically charge ourselves permit fees for those kinds of things. Like when we did the park shelter, for example, we didn't charge permit fees for that. And so I want to get a sense for you, although technically the school is doing it. So I think they should be required to get a building permit because it's an engineered structure. It's 9 feet off the ground. There's some safety issues associated with that. But it may be reasonable not to charge, fees. Especially since
What's the purpose of it? Is that really going to
I'll
fill
let
it from?
Shane, do you want to talk about it a little bit?
That's,
Why would it need to be up?
All right, so what they want to do is put a second story on the concession building at the softball field, so they have like a little press box type.
like they have in
Announcing.
baseball.
Kind of, yep. It's kind of same what the high school has. So they'd be taking the roof off, adding a story, putting the roof back on, and then they want to put a 16 by 16 deck on the east side of it, kind of towards the pitching area there that they put in a few years ago. We'd work with them, based on the discussions I've had, we'd work with them as far as maintenance, like we have been in the past years, you know, a lot of times they supply labor and some of the materials. Sometimes we kick in a few materials, whether it be shingles or whatever it is, you know, for the complex. Those concerns are brought up, but that's kind of a quick and dirty project scope, I guess.
Is it gonna be like closed in, like out at the football field, and like locked doors so nobody can get up there running around?
Yep. So it'd be.
So at the end of the day, the structure will meet all the building codes. In the past, you know, we have said that we would not waive fees, you know, for people without, you know, council direction in doing that. And this is kind of one of those situations where, you know, we feel like we would normally collect a fee like that. But we also think it's reasonable not to collect the fee in this case. And so the question for you really is, you know, do we want to waive a couple $100 worth of permit fees, you know, for this project?
Well, and we own it too, right?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
So we'd be
There'll
taking,
still be that it's a safe structure.
Yeah, it still has to meet all the building codes. Yep.
So, as far as the building side of it goes, we would still required to pay in state surcharge, but we're talking less than $10 for the state surcharge, and we'd still file a permit. So if something ever did happen there, we have records and we can put all of our inspection records into that permit. So if it ever had to be pulled later, 30 years from now, the deck falls off because it rotted or whatever, they can prove that it was safe at the time of construction, which it isn't going to get to that case, but you know, just on the legal side of it, if something happened, we have something to go back on anyway.
I think it kind of falls under like the picnic shelter too. Do all the paperwork, but all we'd be doing is moving money from here to there, so it's kind of a moot point, so.
Yeah, it'd be great if I get a motion, just waive the permit fees for the.
Also move.
Second.
Okay, we've had a first and second to waive the building permit fees on the deck project construction at the softball fields. Any further discussion? If not, we'll have a vote. Roll call, please.
Randall,
Aye.
Dobson,
Aye.
Hooman,
Yes.
Teagues,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Pro Tem Mayor Schmidt.
Yes. All right, that motion is approved.
Thank you, Mayor. A few other items. I think that a lot of people are aware that we have some open positions in our administration and finance department. I'm currently interviewing, or I will be tomorrow, a couple of people for the finance director position. Don't know yet what that's going to look like, but you know we've got some qualified applicants for that job. Our plan is to hire a finance clerk for the other position that's going to be open. We started advertising that today, and believe it or not, I got 3 resumes this afternoon. We'll try to move ahead as quickly as we possibly can with that. But in the interim, we've kind of already published it on the TV as well as on Facebook. But just for the public's benefit, until then, we're going to be short some people, which means that we're reducing some of our hours here for the DMV temporarily. That's going to start next Monday, a week from today, October 3rd. And we'll be open between 9 and noon and 1 and 3. So we're going to be reducing by about 15 hours a week temporarily. We worked with the DMV already to do that, and so they're aware of what's going on, and you know, that's what we have to do in the short run until we can get some more people. Hopefully that'll happen as quickly as possible. If you want to apply for the finance clerk position, and I'll even take an application for a finance director too, you can go to the website, and the finance clerk position is up there, or you can shoot me an email with a resume and your cover letter at ehansen@tracymn.org. But ultimately, we're actively hiring for those 2 positions right now, and hopefully we'll have them in place as soon as possible. The other thing I wanted to mention is
Is
that
it going to be in the paper too?
Yeah, we're going to put I just talked to Per about this a little bit earlier. We're going to put the finance clerk position in the paper tomorrow. Yep.
Can we, I just throw this out that we're closed from 12 to 1, which happens to be a lot of the times that people have their lunch hour that would like to come in and do that on
Yep.
their lunch hour.
Yep.
Could we maybe be closed from 11 to 12 and open from,
I can
12
look
to
at that. I
3
mean, the
or-
issue is that our people need lunches too.
well, I mean,
He's just saying to adjust. it
Yeah,
to
and I that's a
accommodate to
good
the
that's a good
public.
thought. That's not something I was thinking about, to be honest with you. We could probably do that. We close from 11 to 1 instead. I could
11
make
to
that. I can
12.
make that adjustment. Yeah, be closed
Or-
from 11 to be
Yeah,
closed.
11 to 12.
Be closed from 11 to 12 and open from 12 to 1.
because maybe like.
I could
is 9
probably
normally the time that's.
normally we're open from 8 to 4 without a closure during the day.
What's been traffic?
The traffic has been really light, to be honest with you. There's hardly ever a line.
That 8 to 9 is not a busy time at all.
Not particularly. I mean, occasionally you get somebody that's outside waiting, but
I mean, is the noon hour a busy time? I'm just throwing it out.
busy-ish.
Yeah.
So maybe we would be better served, or the public would be better served to do a 9 to 11 and then a 12 to 3.
Or 12 to 2.
Well, I mean, it'd still be the same amount of hours,
Yeah.
saying 9 to 11 and 12 to 3. It's just 2 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon.
Right, right. I can make that adjustment if that's what you would prefer. We'd have to change our advertising on that, but we can do that.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, all right, we'll do that. Last week, Jeff and Val and I met with a group of seniors, about 20 or 25 of them in the library basement, just talking about services in general, and a number of them had expressed their concerns about what may or may not happen budgetarily with the services that we're currently providing at the Eagles Club. And I know the city council hasn't made a full decision and won't do that until, we adopt the budget at the end of the year, but one of the suggestions for reducing our deficit in the budget was to, move that somewhere else so that you didn't have the cost of staffing it. That's really what the goal is ultimately, is trying to figure out how we can do this with less cost. And so we're going to explore some potential other options to see if there's a way to accommodate those requests and still be able to provide the service in a way for less money. I thought it was a really good meeting overall, and there was a lot of discussion, and I think I'm actually pretty happy these days in general. I think there's a lot of collaborative effort going on right now between folks on these kinds of issues, and some good positive momentum overall. And there was a wide-ranging discussion on a lot of issues, whether it be services. What's that?
Where was that meeting
It was in the library basement.
Was there a pretty good crowd?
20, 25 people. Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good crowd.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Yep. We talked about grants and applying for those. We talked about what a new community center might look like. We talked about fundraising. I mean, services that would be provided. There's a wide-ranging discussion, and from my perspective, we haven't gotten enough feedback like that, so it was a good thing. The last thing is the tree farm that you all wanted to talk about. So there is currently a bunch of trees that were planted a number of years ago, and I don't know, Shane, you might want to come up and talk about this too. But there is a tree farm, and a number of years ago we had planted some saplings. They're actually getting to be a little bit bigger now, and I'm not sure how many are out there.
Where's this at?
Why don't you come up and talk about what it is first, so people know?
More than 3.
I guess I wasn't prepared for a discussion on this tonight, but
I wasn't either, but
a little heads up would give you a little more information. But there is quite a few trees out there. I think there's a lot of pin oaks, for what I recall. I wasn't here when they planted them. They've been planted probably back in 2005, before I started, and there was nobody really here anymore that was there at the time. But were you here?
No, where was this at? Where they?
It's at our well site.
Out on the Highline Road.
Yeah. And honestly, some trees there is beneficial to the wells and the well site. for snow reasons, but they're a little thick there, so they could be thinned out a little bit too. They're getting to the point where you almost need like a tandem axle truck to move them, a bigger tree spade, but they are all able to be moved, and a lot of them are pretty good size now, so they're probably 16, 17 years old. So oaks don't grow that fast, but
So, Seth, you brought this up. Have you got an idea of why you want to take them from the tree farm and put them somewhere else?
Yeah, and I apologize, Shane, I should have brought it up a little bit earlier, but I just read an article in the Star Tribune, and they were just talking about how in the Twin Cities, the neighborhoods, the treescapes are so important, and in some areas they don't have very many trees for a variety of reasons. And I just thought it was timely now for us. We had a couple of big major street projects that we've had to remove some trees, and there's a number of boulevards that are without any trees. And so I just thought of that a tree farm, and we've never really discussed it since I've been on the council, and I was just wondering if there's any interest in the council's part to just take a look at that. Maybe refer to the park committee. Maybe it would be one committee that could do some research, or staff, to see what would be the cost of moving some of those trees, or if it's even feasible. Some might be too big. But I know about 10 years ago, the Kiwanis sponsored the cost of the tree spade moving about 10, 12 oak trees from Tree Farm to Central Park, for example. And I just kind of wanted to start getting some discussion going about what might be a long-term plan. We've got the budget coming up, and I know we're looking at a deficit in the general fund already, so may not probably be even for something for next year, but maybe the year following, just to start the discussion of what can we do, or what are some options for us.
yeah, I guess we're not opposed to moving them somewhere, whether it be a park, and I know everybody has different opinions on where they should go, so really nothing's been done with them over the years. We have moved a few out over the years as some have died. I know there's quite a few that went to the cemetery, and some went to some of the parks. I know even Central Park has a few oaks in it that came from there. They planted them back when the county had the tree program, and I think that's where most of them came from, for what I understood. But that program kind of went away, about 10 years ago or so. So nothing's really been done as far as planting any new trees, but that'd be something worth looking into, I guess. I don't know what the cost would be. I've heard $300 to $500 per tree, but it could add up quickly if you're do 20, 30 of them. But
I wonder what the survival rate would be, a tree that big.
that's the other concern. Oaks don't move well, but if you get enough big enough spade and water it well, it'll live. But
My suggestion is we just refer to the park board and put it on a future agenda for that group. And Seth and I did have a conversation about this last week, and I wasn't really thinking about the council meeting coming up, so I suppose that's on me for not giving Shane a heads up. But ultimately, yeah, I think that's the best forum for this kind of discussion. Where would they go? Would we want to make a recommendation about how many are there? They like field trips anyway. Maybe we could take them out there to look at it.
yeah, and I can get a hold of a couple different tree spades and see what it would cost, to move them from there to in town somewhere.
Yep.
Well, I would just like to not see us plant any trees between the sidewalks and the roads. just get out of that habit, because all that does is cause problems somewhere down the line.
Yeah,
Well,
'cause
that
we've-
could be part of the discussion, but to me, a community that has trees on the boulevard, it greatly enhances the neighborhood.
My trees all hang over it, so I'm enhancing the neighborhood.
Well, it's something that we can talk about, and I just wanted to know if there's some council support for having a committee like the park board look into it and having staff maybe research some of those costs.
I would like to see the survival rate of moving a tree of that size.
Yeah.
I think you should look into maybe adopting some sort of a policy on trees and boulevards, because there's certain boulevards that are only like 4 or 5 foot wide. I mean, you can plant a little mini ornamental type tree that, doesn't grow real big, but you don't want to plant, a big maple tree in that much, because then you got curb and sidewalk issues.
Sidewalks gone.
And that's most of the reason so many trees left on these street projects is, we lost probably, 8, 9 dozen in the last few projects. And it's all because of poor planting habits, 100 years ago. So, if you got certain types of trees, they should look at what should be there, what shouldn't be there based on how big their root systems get, and, say adopt a policy based on, what the width of the boulevard is too. So, because some of them, if they got a 20-foot right-of-way boulevard or no sidewalks, that's different than,
Yeah.
different areas.
That's an excellent point, because right now we don't have any policy in place, correct?
Right.
And, obviously, the street department is not going to be interested in having an oak tree on a boulevard that's constantly shedding acorns into the street every year. So, yeah, there's absolutely got to be some guidelines.
They're smaller than walnuts, but
John, George, I would like to point out that of the 12, I can't remember, it was 10 or 12 oak trees planted by the Kiwanis Club, at the Kiwanis Club's expense. All of them are living today, and they're doing well.
How many years ago was that, though?
About 10.
Okay, so those trees are 10 years older now, the same tree that you're moving, I'm assuming.
Right, it may be impossible to move those oak trees now, but
It doesn't matter to me, I like trees too, but I don't want to spend $200 or $500 to move a tree.
You almost want to get an arborist in it to take a look at them.
Yeah.
Give
Yeah.
us some,
it may
I
be,
mean, is this the right timing too with kind of a drought and, there's a lot of things to feed into there.
I'm not against it, Seth, I just.
right, no, that's.
I just think we refer it to the Parks Committee and move forward
Yeah.
from there.
I agree. Yep, we can do that. We'll bring it up. We'll put it on the agenda for the next Parks Committee.
Good.
all right, thanks.
Thanks, Shane.
Mayor, that's all I have for my report, unless there are any questions on any item that you would like to ask about or anything on my report. If not, I can have Val come up and talk about the CARE. And I didn't even think about putting it up as a presentation on the screen. We should have done that. It's all right.
That's why I asked you if you wanted it in PowerPoint form.
Yeah, well, my brain's been a little occupied in the last couple weeks.
I know.
kinda missed that.
I shouldn't rub it in.
It's in the council's
I think
packet,
everyone got it
for
in
what
their
it's worth.
packet.
Yeah,
so
we just didn't get an
we're-
opportunity to put it on screen.
Right. So I'm here to talk to you about some non-library related news tonight. So this is about the civic arts cohort that some other city staff members and community members participated in this year. So, the first page says probably what you're thinking right now is why art? What does this have to do with city government? And that is absolutely a valid question. So here are 6 reasons why art can be useful in city government. It can activate creative solutions, advance community government healing. We've all heard of art therapy. Well, this is kind of like art therapy for communities. Celebrate people-powered government. showcase that culture is central to place, make visible hidden beauty, and help imagine a better future, which is, of course, what we all would like to do. So Tracy was selected for a 6-month civic arts learning lab. Along with the communities of New London and Milan, they specifically chose smaller rural communities. The program was led by Ash Hansen of the Department of Public Transformation with support from the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council. They actually funded the entire project. So our Tracy cohort members were Jeff Carpenter, Nancy Dobson, Eric Hansen, Koo Lor, Rosemary Martin, and myself. And you see there's a couple pictures there of some of our activities. Contrary to the picture, we did not have any fun at all. Well, just not. No, it was, we were drinking apple juice, I believe.
Oh, is that what it was? You put all the pictures of us drinking in there, that's great.
But the bottom picture has the picture of one of our meetings here in Tracy, one of our workshops. So what we did during the Learning Lab, through a combination of in-person and digital workshops, we shared resources and technical assistance. Through that, the Tracy cohort learned about civic artist partnerships of various approaches and sizes. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Every community has to find what's right for them. It may be a smaller project, it may be something larger, maybe you grow into something larger. We identified opportunities for activation and imagination within our own community, began planning for a cross-sector civic arts advisory group. So the goal there is to get as many people involved as possible. Maybe people who you wouldn't normally think of as being involved with the arts. You want to bring everybody in to make everybody feel included and part of the project. We developed an understanding of our community's readiness for a civic artist partnership. I think that was an eye-opener for some of us in the group, was to go through this and say how, in what ways is Tracy ready, in what way are we not ready, and what things might we need to work on. We participated in a peer support network with the other communities, exploring civic artist partnerships, and developed some relationships that I think we will keep up as we follow each other's progress. And we also were part of strengthening the network of civic arts partnerships throughout the southwest part of Minnesota. So now we get to talk about some of the fun stuff. So civic arts, a little bit more specific definition. Civic arts projects bring artists into collaboration and co-design with community members, non-arts partners, and or local residents around a community-defined aspiration, challenge, or vision. So here's an example. Granite Falls has actually done a lot of this sort of thing, so they're a great example. So they did an artist in residency program that ended up almost a year ago, and that was the first time that Jeff and Eric and I really found out about this whole project. We went up to Granite Falls, we met with Ash Hansen and their current artist in residence at the time. She has since moved on to something else. And I think they just started a new artist in residency recently. So in Granite Falls, the City Artist in Residence program brought monthly makers markets, creative crosswalk art project, guest artist series, City Hall profile pieces, and a new festival, as well as other small art projects within the community. And you can see there in the picture that I included some colorful benches that they placed. We've talked about putting benches downtown. Could that maybe be an art project? That's the type of things to think about. You can also kind of see in the background of that picture how they painted their crosswalks. And it just kind of adds a vibrancy to a downtown area. If you ever go down to a different community and you're in their downtown, you're thinking, wow, this place looks alive. If you kind of look around and ask yourself, what is it that makes it that way? A lot of times it's art. Little color, little vibrancy. Our next case study is also from Granite Falls, actually. They've got a really great project that is ongoing called the Yes House, and that is involving the transformation of an old building into a community gathering and makerspace. So they took this old building downtown that I don't recall how long it had been empty, but they took it and decided we're going to make something of this. So current plans include co-working and community gathering space, a multi-use performance venue, climbing and fitness area, artist and wellness studio, youth creative zone and multimedia center, recording studio, and an artist in residence apartment and a staff apartment. So it's actually got 2 apartments already completed upstairs for their artists in residence. The downstairs is very unfinished, but they still have, little plays and things like that in there and gatherings. Their artist in residence is also able to use that as a studio space. Another one that's not Granite Falls is in Sauk Center. The 510 Art Lab is a makerspace that is a member-run 501c3 organization. Members there have access to space and equipment that allows them to independently learn and create in an inclusive environment. Some people join and use the lab as a working studio, while others join to gather in a creative atmosphere with people who enjoy learning a variety of art forms. The 510 Art Lab currently has equipment and tools in pottery, stained glass, woodworking, weaving, sewing, and culinary arts. So that's just a reminder to us that arts is a lot broader category than sometimes we give it credit for. Sometimes something can be useful, like sewing, pottery, cooking, but they can also be an art form. And they also have classes there that are offered regularly. I included those other 2 communities because I think they're a little bit more relatable for a town of Tracy's size. It's easier for us to think that if Granite Falls or Sauk Center can do it, we can too. But I really like what St. Paul has done. They've been doing this for quite a long time. They've had an city artist in residency program since 2005. And that artist works as part of a 2-person team across departments to explore art making that generates innovations in public art practice. So what they do is if they've got a new project that they're working on, that they're going to put in new sewer grates or new manhole covers or new stop signs, they think about how can we put art into that? And I think that really struck me as being an interesting practice, something that doesn't necessarily cost you anymore, especially if you're already doing a project, but it's something that can enhance the look of your community. So what does civic arts look like in Tracy? Well, the nice thing is it's whatever we decide we want it to look like. So throughout this, our cohort, we kind of had a joint vision toward the end that we wanted to create a project that works to beautify the community and encourage economic development in accordance with the City Council's established goals, because it's all about making what you have set as your goals, making that happen. We're hoping to apply for a grant in 2023 for an artist in residency program, develop relationships in the community, and build community-wide support for and participation in a public art project, and work to integrate public art into public works and other city projects. So that could be a community center too. When we build that, what can we include that's public art that can potentially even open up some revenue streams for us, which is great. So then I just included some funding options there on the next page. The Southwest Minnesota Arts Council is very supportive of small and large art projects. They are very competitive, but I think we would have a good chance, especially having gone through this program. The National Endowment for the Arts is another one that can help you start an artist in residency program. And the last page is just some sites and sources with some of the information that I used here. So if you want to learn more about any of these places, you can do that. I also have the Southwest Minnesota Rural Civic Arts Partnership Resource Guide, which was created actually through the Learning Lab that we participated in. So if anyone would like to take a look at that, just let me know and I will email it to you. Does anyone have any questions? I know it's a lot.
Well, I think it's exciting, some of the ideas that you're proposing. I agree, can certainly spruce up our downtown. What, you know what the financing was in Granite Falls for that Yes House?
So that is, a work in progress. As I said, I think they are doing fundraising along the way, applying for grants where they're able. And now we kind of have access to help from Ash Hansen and the Department of Public Transformation. As we're looking for some of those sources of funding, we can kind of use them as a guide to how to make things happen.
There's a couple things to note about that. I mean, one is that I think that the building itself was actually donated originally.
Yeah.
And then the question is, well, how do you, what do you do with that? So we're actually really fortunate to work with somebody like Ash Hansen, which, you wouldn't necessarily know, but is kind of a big deal in this world. She is a former Obama fellow and has received a number of grants. Like, for example, when we were looking through the Blandon Foundation grants earlier this year for the community center, her organization pops up as having gotten one of those grants, and a variety of other things, from the National Endowment of the Arts to the Minnesota local grants and things like that. She's working on big national projects. I think one of the things she's working on right now is an economic development arts program just for the entire state of Kansas. Yeah. So she's kind of a big deal, and the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council is kind of all in on this concept of how do we bring these kinds of things to rural communities, and it's a tourism issue too, right? Because people will come to our community just like they come to Wheels Across the Prairie. Well, would they come to Wheels Across the Prairie and then maybe come down and look at a mural on the side of the library, or would they look at an art walk in Central Park that includes exhibits and stuff like that? And so it's a reason for people to be here. And I'll give you even a kind of a anecdotal example. So we were out on Sunday during Boxcar Day weekend, and we were doing the welcoming week, chalk walk art. And what is her name again? The woman that was helping us doing that.
With the chalk art?
Yeah.
Sammy Jo Miller.
Thank you, Sammy Jo Miller. So I was talking to Sammy Jo Miller, and we actually hired her to do some art programs for the kids during the summer too, as part of the community ed program. And she says, "Oh boy, I didn't know that all this stuff was happening in Tracy." And I said, "Well, how did you get here?" And she says, "Well, my husband and I, we were looking for kind of a place to go, and somehow we settled in Lamberton, but." I really wanted to bring arts to rural areas. And I said, well, why? And they have a family and kids and stuff. I said, well, why didn't you come to Tracy? Well, we didn't know about Tracy, so we ended up in Lamberton. I said, well, how do we get you to Tracy? So when you have these kinds of programs, you attract people like that have that kind of vision into your town. Part of your goal is to, how do we grow the community and bring people to town? This is just kind of really the kernel, the seed, the small seed of something that could grow, much bigger. But Tom knows, because of what's happening at the Cinnamon Hen. Well, repurposing furniture is really all about art, and it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people, and it can be an exciting program. So conceptually, the idea is, how do we get more of the community involved? How do we get grants to do this kind of stuff? economic development, beautification. I mean, it could be really neat in the community. Granite Falls is doing some pretty neat stuff. So,
And just, after this, pay attention as you drive through different communities. I noticed earlier this summer when I drove through Battle Lake and we stopped to eat at a restaurant there and got out and noticed there was an alley that was painted, with different art in the alley. And then they had like a welcome sign with brochures in it, and then they had this giant metal fish. And Shane's saying, please, no, don't do this. But, but it just was like, wow, that's really cool, and so just, take a look around you, think about how some of these things can be translated into Tracy, and what makes Tracy unique and how we can represent that through art.
It's a feather in Tracy's cap that we were even selected for this program, along with New London and Milan. Because those two towns have reputations in the arts world as being really progressive, innovative, and kind of happening places. So it's
They do, and I think they were looking for maybe a community that hadn't done much. In terms of applying for grants through the Southwest Initiative Foundation. And I think they wanted something more in our far southwestern corner of the state. It seems like they get a lot more applications from like that Hutchinson and Wilmer type area than they do from down here. So I think they're trying to get more people involved from this area.
Any other comments?
There's one other side benefit too to this as well, and so after we started getting involved in this, they asked Val to be a grant evaluator for the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, and so Val is now on the committee that determines who might get that money. Which, if we're applying for something, she'd have to recuse herself from, but darn.
No,
But
they just put you on a different panel.
But the nice thing about it is that gives you an insight into what people are looking for, right? And when you're a grant evaluator, that helps you get to be a better grant. And so when you kind of get engaged in the larger, community, what's going around, you start to learn what's happening and what might be available. I didn't even know there was a Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, for quite a while before I was after I was the city administrator. And so just being aware of what's happening, I think, helps us look at opportunities.
How much, so this particular grant, or how much longer does this last? Are we into the end of it, into the middle of it?
We actually completed the program, at the end of July?
Okay.
Was when we had our
So what is
last meeting.
kind of the next, so the next step, what is just finding more participation? Is that?
Right, and, like I said, we'd like to start thinking about potentially a smaller project to start us out. An artist in residency can be, we found out, as little as a day, a few hours, or a year. So, it's not necessarily a huge money, there isn't necessarily a huge amount of money input required. And if you work with a local artist, you wouldn't have to pay for a lodging or, that much travel or anything like that. So I think there are a lot of possibilities of ways that we can get started, within the next.
I mean, ultimately, what we want to do is apply for a grant to bring an artist in town to help us identify what a potential project might be. Work with the community, engage people, and say, what does that look like? What does art look like in the city of Tracy? And so, I don't know if it's a festival, if it's a crosswalk, downtown beautification program with a mural, or if it's, something in a park. It could be anything. And that was kind of the thing that I learned about this, is that, it's really an organic kind of thing. You can't just take what somebody else is doing and plop it into Tracy and expect it to work. It has to be what makes sense here in this community. And there are artists in this community, and musicians, and there are people that are interested in theater, and crafts people that are making, items. And so that talent exists here in town. We just need to tap into it and figure out what that means for us.
Right, and we also kind of learned that you have to trust the process and not have it planned before the artist comes. You can say, we're hoping to do something that has this effect, and then you find out the best way to do that. And because it was very challenging for our group to not just, you put us all in a room and we're going to plan a project right now. And it was really hard for us all to just step back and say, okay, that's not our job. That's the artist's job, and we have to trust them to do that when they get here. And the nice part about that is that they can, they can pull things out of the community that maybe we can't in this room accomplish.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Mayor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to move on to new business. And we've got the first item under the city administrative resolution to approve a 2022, or actually 2023 preliminary budget and tax levy.
Thank you, Mayor. We have every year we're required, of course, by law to submit a preliminary budget by the end of September and a preliminary tax levy to the county, which is what we're doing here tonight. And I have a quick presentation, and the line items of the budget are in your packet. So just a little bit about budgeting in general. A budget's a tool. We're looking to kind of manage resources and prioritize projects. I like to look at it as it's an opportunity to spend money on projects that are important to the community. Sometimes people think of it as a limitation, but I think it's an opportunity. A couple of other things to notice about the budget is, by policy, we want revenues to exceed expenditures. We generally like the enterprise funds, like the sewer fund and the water fund, to be able to cover their own costs, so that we're not taking general tax dollars and put in that. And I've talked in general just about, how do we prioritize expenditures? First of all, we have to pay our debt, the money that we owe other people. And then we have operations, so those are the services that we provide to the people. And then lastly is kind of your capital projects. If you have money left over of what you can afford, that's when you would maybe buy a piece of equipment or build something. And your capital projects should reflect the council priorities as well, and be fiscally constrained. So when we create a list of projects, it's projects that we can afford, not just projects we want. These are projects that we can want and we can afford. So 2023 is kind of the first of kind of a 3-year cycle that's going to have some challenges. And it became a little more challenging this year. I mentioned it's kind of a triple whammy to a certain extent. One is that our debt payments in 2023, 24, and 25 start to peak. You've seen that graph before that goes up in those years, and that's because we have our first payment for the street project that is due this year, or due in 2023, and what that means is we're going to have to start paying back all that money that we borrowed for those street projects. What happened this year as well, that we did not expect, is the rising inflation that we're all experiencing. And that's in the cost of our supplies, whether it be maintenance materials, and when we go to the hardware store just like everybody else does, and we have to pay the same costs. Fuel, spend a lot of money on fuel for vehicles, utilities, all that's up for us, our energy costs. And then we have kind of this unknown employee cost, because our union contract is expiring at the end of the year, and so we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. We're hoping to resolve that relatively soon, but as of this presentation tonight, we do not yet know that. Despite those challenges in 2023, we really have some significant resources for capital projects to invest in the community that are new in 2023. One, we sold the Bryan Court, and we have to use some of that money to pay off some of the debt, but there's some money left over from that. And so that's an opportunity to reinvest in the community. We have some unrestricted fund balances, and fund balance is just a fancy word for savings. We have a bond, the 2016 B bonds, that's expiring at the end of this year. We've made the last payment on that. That was the pool, incidentally. We just paid off the pool this year. There's always a little bit of money left over at the end because they make you hold some in reserve just in case you can't make a payment or whatever, which we don't do, but the bond covenants require you to do that, so there's some money from there. And there's still some money in the sewer fund as well that we think that we could utilize. And the nice thing is that we've learned recently with the new infrastructure bill that happened this summer in the federal government is that it looks like we're going to have about $500,000 in new grants from the FAA for the airport as well. And so that's something that has materialized. So there's even though the amount of money we're spending on capital projects, proposing we spend on capital projects next year is a lot, we have a lot of new resources to bear. So the budget by the numbers. Overall, the preliminary budget shows about expenditures of $15.9 million and revenues of $12.9. You might say, well, geez, we're spending more than we're bringing in. Well, that's really because of the bond proceeds from the street project. So last year is the last year of the street project. So we have a lot of money sitting out there that we'd already bonded for that we're going to be spending and finishing up spending in 2023. The general fund itself is currently projected a deficit of $19,000, and that's after some cuts that we'd already made from the previous $94,000. We still need to have some more work to do with this before the final budget. And in general, that's one of the things you need to know about this situation is because of these unknown employee costs and some of these other things, the budget's a little more fluid than it has been the last couple of years. And I think we'll be able to answer those questions before the final budget, but we don't know the answers yet, and so the preliminary budget is definitely going to change between now and the final budget. Our capital projects, $8 million. Most of those is the remainder of the street project. Our debt payments next year are going to be almost $1.7 million. We are asking you to certify a preliminary property tax levy of $1,468,000. And that number can come down, and we anticipate that it actually will come down. But we wanted to give you some flexibility. Our local government aid is basically the same as it was last year. It went up a whole $9,000. So in real terms, we get less and less from the state every year. So what are some of the changes that we're anticipating in the preliminary budget in 2023? You had adopted a few years ago a schedule for our utilities. So it will again include a 3% increase in water fees and an 8% increase in sewer fees. That's per resolution that you had already approved previously. And also includes another $1.25 a month to increase for stormwater fees. All of these fees are related to paying back the street project, the water and sewer portions and storm sewer portions of the street project. So all of this additional money is essentially going to pay off that debt. The budget is assuming a 7% increase in the tax levy, which is what we did last year. We are asking you to certify a 10%, but we don't anticipate it's going to be 10% because we can lower it. And we plan on lowering it. We just don't know all the details yet on some of the employee costs, and so we're giving ourselves some flexibility on that. Our general fund debt service, and this is part of the issue, is that even though we paid off one of our bonds this year, because we've got the next bond hitting us next year, our general fund debt service is going up $220,000. And so it's just like when you buy a new house and you have that new payment. You have to find some way to pay for it, and our payments on our new house are going up $220,000 next year. And it'll start to go down again then in 2026 and 2029, but because of the money that was borrowed in 2019, we're now having to start to pay for it. We're going to transfer $43,000 to the airport for operations from the general fund this year. We haven't done that in the past, but we need to do that to support operations at the airport. And it also includes the new franchise fees with the Excel franchise agreement that you already approved last year. It says franchise fees PF. It should be of. That's just a typo. So those are the things that are kind of different in 2023 that we didn't see in 2022. So what are we doing with all this money that we're spending in 2023? Because it's a substantial amount of money that we're spending, most of which we already have laying around. So the Phase 3A Street project, we're going to budget the remainder of everything that we have left. We don't know for sure if it's going to take that much to finish it off or not, because we haven't bid the Center Street project. That is going out to bid, by the way, within weeks. You'll see that at the end of October. So we're going to be bidding that really soon. That's $6.7 million. And that includes four things. One is the pond decommissioning. You've already approved that project, and they're going to start construction, and they're going to start moving dirt on October 10th, the week of October 10th, and they'll be done in the spring. So that project will be done before the farmers start planting, but that project is imminent. Center Street, I just mentioned. We haven't bid that yet, but we're going to be bidding it here real quickly. We did get approval we had to wait and get approval from the county and the Minnesota Department of Transportation and Rural Development before we could start, and it took a while to get all of those people to approve the project. We know that we should have been done with the Phase 3A2 project this year on September 1st, but we did not finish it. We're waiting for the final wearing course, the final lift of the pavement to be done in the spring after we inspect it to determine whether or not we have any other issues with settling. So that project will be done in the spring. So some of the money that we had appropriated for that this year, we're going to be pushing into next year. And then the last thing that we're going to see in the spring is that when we finally figure out how much Center Street is going to cost, what all these projects are going to cost, we're anticipating we're going to have some grant money left over from rural development for sewer-related projects. So there was a portion of the Phase 3A, is it 3 or 4 that was the pipelining? 4. Of the original Phase 3A4 project that we can go back and do some of that pipelining. We just don't know how much yet because we're waiting to see how much money is going to be left over. That project's already been approved by rural development. It's just a matter of figuring out how much do we have left and how much of that can we actually do. So we think we're going to be able to go back and add some things next year, but we just don't know how much yet. But we budgeted the entire amount for next year, expecting to spend all the money that we have to complete this project, because that's what it's intended for.
Refresh my memory what the pipelining project is.
So we have some pipes that we don't need to completely replace, but gets the inside. So what they do is they have a product that essentially gets blown inside and adds some stability to that pipe on the inside, and that extends the life of that pipe, so you don't have to go in and dig it up and replace it until later.
Thank you.
In addition to that Phase 3A street project, we've got in here $1.5 million in projects as well, and that sounds like a lot. About half of that is grant related. Most of that at the airport for the hangars. And so I know because you all were there, but I'll just for the public's benefit. We have a project list, and we went to City Council, and after the staff had kind of ranked what the top projects were, we asked the City Council to rank what the top projects are. These are the top projects that need to be done in 2023 that were ranked in your top 10 projects. There's a couple projects, police car, for example, that ranked in your top 10, but we don't actually need a police car until 2024. So that's going to happen in 2024, but that project is not in here because it's going to happen next year, or 2024, a year and a half from now. These are the projects that ranked in your top. The airport hangars, because of the new money that we got from the FAA. It's the BIL money is what it's called. It's basically the infrastructure bill. Replacing the pool liners, some street maintenance, and that's, the same kind of stuff we've been doing, crack sealing and seal coating and stuff like that. Piece of equipment for public works, that's a used backhoe, replacing a really old mower with parks, some money for some downtown benches and other kinds of street furniture and stuff like that. Turnout gear for the fire department and books for the library. So you might ask the question, how the heck are we going to pay for this $1.5 million? Didn't I just tell you we didn't have any money because of all this new debt service? Well, like I said, even though our tax levy it doesn't have a lot of capacity, we do have extra money. The 2016 B bonds, which was issued for the pool, and so I think somebody even said in the meeting that night, well, geez, if we issued that money debt for the pool, wouldn't it make sense to spend some of that money on the pool? And so that's what the plan is. There's some money from the O'Brien court sale that we can use. We still have a large sewer fund balance over and above what we need for reserve in excess of $600,000. So we're going to spend a little bit of that money out of the sewer fund, and that's primarily going to go to street maintenance and possibly to hangars. There's a small hangar loan that we're looking at taking out. It is going to be paid for by new rents from the hangars. And so it wouldn't be a burden on the taxpayers. It'll be paid for by the people who are actually renting the space at the hangars. And we have a little bit of money right now that's in the capital fund that we did not spend this year that we're just going to roll over next year and spend. The remainder of that's about $700,000. That's about half of that $1.5 million. The rest is all grants related to the hangar from MnDOT and from the FAA. And so it looks like a lot of money, and it is, but in reality we're spending money that is savings that we can afford to spend at this point. And we think these are important projects. We think we need to continue to invest in the community. And because we have this excess of reserve money that we don't need, we think it's good to do this. So what do you have left to do from a budget standpoint? Well, we're still negotiating with the union on what the employee costs are going to be. And so you're going to see some changes between the preliminary and the final budget. There's no doubt about that. We just don't know what they are yet. So you'll receive, I think, by mid-November, about a month before, a final budget book that will be more solid than what we have right now. And then on December 12th, you'll have your truth and taxation hearing, which will be your public hearing on the budget, and the final adoption of the budget and the certification of the tax levy at that time, which we have to do by the end of the year. That's the one meeting you have in December. It's not an extra meeting. It's a normal city council meeting. And that's what we have left. Are there any questions about the preliminary budget, which is, you can think of it as a draft budget, essentially is what it is.
Eric, on $384,000 estimate on the pool liners, is that an updated estimate?
It is. We had originally put in 376, and Shane went out and got a written estimate at 384. So we were pretty close on the 376, but 384 is a written estimate.
And that's both pools, right?
Yes, that's both pools. Yep, the baby pool and the full lap pool.
And then we'll have to have an RFP to.
Yeah, that's another thing to point out is that we can't just pay on that estimate because it's such a large amount. We'll have to do a full bid RFP on that project. We haven't figured out how to do that yet. We might end up enlisting someone's help in order to make that happen because it's such a big deal and it's kind of a specific thing we don't have expertise in.
Shane, I suppose on the...
Can you come up, Shane?
Yeah, I can't hear real well back here.
Okay. Shane, regarding the pool liner, if we pulled the trigger and went ahead with that project, what do you foresee as the timeline? If you got good bids and we accepted them, what would be the timeline?
We would have to probably bid them out by March, April, and then probably plan on like in August, you know, after the pool closes,
Oh, I see.
you know, and then they could finish it. You know, each company's different, but the company that installed our liner figured it would take about 30 days for the install. And it just has to be, you know, not 40 degrees or lower. It's got to be, you know, decent out. And usually we get that through October, so just so everything welds decent. But that way we wouldn't have to interrupt the season.
Okay, so at least one more season with the present liner.
Yeah, we'll have some more band-aiding to do, but we'll make it through if it's gonna get fixed. But if it's gonna be a while, then we're gonna have to do a, you know, $10,000-$12,000 patch job to get it to last another couple of years. But
Would that liner then materials, would that be stored on site somewhere for months ahead of time, or would it just arrive in time?
it would likely arrive in time. It could be on a pallet. You know, in the past, it's usually shown up like 2 weeks before they come. And, you know, it'd be something we'd store at one of our facilities somewhere in the meantime. We wouldn't want it sitting out anyway, so.
What did you think was coming back from that project that was in Virginia, or whatever you call it, the pool, Camden's Pond?
It's about $240,000. Yeah. So but that would be the bulk of the
Yeah.
380. Yeah.
It just seems sensible if that's where it came from.
Yeah, and I think that's the thought. And honestly, you know, when you all rank projects, the pool and turnout gear and the airport, you know, was every single one of you ranked that in as one of your top projects. So, I mean, I think there's a pretty strong consensus that those are kind of your top priorities at this point.
Now, what's the longevity of that, do you think? I mean, do they have any kind of a warranty, or are we talking about a 5-year, 10-year?
20 years with intermittent maintenance
Okay.
throughout that 20 years, similar to what we have now.
Good.
With a PVC liner, it's just, you know, there's plastics, they break down with UV over time. Things get brittle. So, just like a sewer clean out in your yard.
Shane, is what we're doing then with our pool liners, is that similar to what the YMCA and Marshall is doing, or will shortly be doing?
I'm not familiar with what they're doing out there.
And what do we, like this year, what did we put in to make it work an additional year?
A lot of marine grade silicone.
But I mean, like how much? I mean,
Dollars wise?
yeah. I think
Less than 500.
Oh, okay.
It's not a lot of labor,
Yeah.
right?
You know, it was probably a couple days of running around and finding all the holes and filling them. And now there's more, because nobody did our cleaning this fall. There's more that show up. Just it's from shrinkage.
But by doing it, we're going to do offset some ongoing maintenance for the next 20 years.
Yeah, I mean you're starting fresh again. You know the structure is the same, but you know what's holding the water is all been replaced at that point. So.
Shane, what's your judgment on the 68,000 that's been budgeted for street maintenance? Is that adequate to kind of get us by next year, or?
Yeah, and I can adjust things and push them off a year, but the more you push things off too, the further behind you get to, so.
And I suppose you have a pretty general idea of how you're going to use that money, but that's subject to conditions next spring and summer. Is that fair
Yeah,
to say?
I have a spreadsheet with each year on kind of what we're gonna do and, you know, kind of project it for each year, but just based on, you know, how long streets have sat, you know, without maintenance or when they were last maintained, just try to keep them on a rotation, so.
What What other questions do we have on the comments on the preliminary budget and tax levy?
I just want to make sure the public understands that with this resolution, yes, it's a potential of a 10%, but that is set at the max. That is not our intention for a final, that this is not final, so I don't want people thinking that's what it's going to be, if that makes sense.
And it's also important to remember that a 10% increase in the levy or a 7% increase in the levy or whatever it turns out to be, that does not mean that your property taxes are necessarily increasing by that amount, because your property taxes are based on a whole lot of other factors, though. All of the property in the taxing district and what the other taxing entities do, such as the school board and so forth, and valuations. So,
Well, last year we did like an educational piece for the public where we showed like if your taxes were, or your property value was this much, with us, let's just say 7% increase, this is what your taxes would go up. Where, so people
That'd
can
be good.
see
I
where it
think we
is.
can do that again. I was hesitant to do that, not knowing what the number is going to settle at, but I think that when we have an idea of what we think that might be, I think that's a good suggestion. Yeah, we should do that again.
And I think that.
I've still got that spreadsheet.
Well,
I
that's
just
what I
need
figured
to.
if we could just
yeah.
plug in numbers.
I still got that spreadsheet. I can do that math. I was gonna add that you talked about assessed valuation, Mayor. You know, when you might remember, we went with the presentation that we got from the county assessor 6 months ago. You know, assessed valuations are up like 19% in the city of Tracy, and so, you know, a lot of communities are doing some similar kinds of things because, you know, those values are up. I think Marshall just proposed something that was something like 9%. So I don't think we're going to need that by any means. You know, this is just and the budget's built around 7. There's just so many unknowns, and it gives us some flexibility, but I'm sure that it's going to be closer to 7 when it's all said and done.
And we will be presenting additional information at the Truth and Taxation hearing in December. So that kind of information that Jerry was talking about can be presented at that time. Any other questions about the preliminary budget and the preliminary tax levy? If not, I would entertain a motion of resolution 2022-86 to approve the 2023 preliminary budget and tax levy. Do I have such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on resolution 2022-86? Roll call, please.
Teagues,
Aye.
Whitman,
Yes.
Dobson,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Van Dyke,
Aye.
Pro Tem Mayor Schmidt.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
The next item I'm going to let Diane cover. This is something we have to do to approve the election judges for the general election. Do you have anything you want to add on that, Diane?
No, we are going to go with 4 judges instead of 5 for the general election, just because with COVID, we added the 5th one to be at the door to guide people in. I personally don't feel we need 5, so we're gonna back it down again to 4.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2022-87 to approve the election judges.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the election judges who are named in the resolution: Linda Reckus, Jamie Johnson, Lois Schmidt, John Wendorf, Sheila Hellison, and Pam Peterson, with Linda Rickus being designated as the head judge. All in favor of, roll call, please.
Koopman,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Dawson,
Aye.
Landine,
Aye.
Teagues,
Aye.
and Mayor Schmidt.
Yes, and I'd like to add a thank you to all those people willing to serve as election judges. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The last item is just, Krista Lisso, of course, resigned, and we do not have a deputy administrator, city administrator, so we need to do that, and so Shane is my choice. Per the charter, it's my appointment, but you have to approve it. And so if you wish to place that burden on Shane's shoulders, then I would like a motion to approve that. We can do it with a simple motion.
I'll make a motion to appoint Shane the deputy administrator.
I'll second.
Shane, are you willing to accept this honor?
I guess I could do that.
Thank you. We appreciate it. All in favor of the appointment of Shane as deputy administrator, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Shane. Okay, we are moving on down to, our city attorney is not here. But we do have on our agenda a non-public closed meeting to discuss our negotiations with our union on a new contract. Could I have a motion to that effect to close the regular public meeting?